D.
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 Okay.
You're also invited to Colombia if you ever also want to come there, because I'm actually from Colombia. I live in the Netherlands, but I'm from Colombia, so also.
We definitely will talk
Thanks to
about
Cobra
that.
and Simone and Melis and all the people that is, yeah.
Thank you. That is so kind.
Exciting. I just to give answer also back to Melis's question around how we approach it. I tend to not have like, I do have notes here. So if I look down, I'm taking notes. So I wrote down intimidated in a queer, sexy way, just because, you know, you gotta write that down. But I don't have a list of questions. So how I approach it is that I sort of introduce you, but again, not with your bio or anything, just sort of like your connection through the window, for example, which in all of your cases is super clear. And then sort of that clears up how we are as through the window connected to your practice. And that would be a moment that I ask you, so like, tell us something about your practice. And then maybe like once you're talking, that is a moment for me maybe to like be like, oh, but I also know that you're doing this, and that is also of course a moment for you all to be like, oh, but I read this, can you talk a little bit more about that? So see those 10 to 15 minutes really as a sort of space that can open up, not just as a presentation, but as something, you know, maybe something comes up because there's a glitch in the technology, or maybe Kubra wants to know a little bit more because she saw something last night that was happening, you know, and she's like, well, Melis, you're saying that, but last night. Anyway, so I'm just saying that we can sort of free wave it through. And then once the audience, who we unfortunately cannot see, but they're there, once they get to a more like an understanding of your practice, that's also a moment for us to be more in conversation and potentially also invite questions from the audience. Is that actually, by the way, okay with y'all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And who's moderating those? Sorry for the technical, practical approach.
Club Coweed is moderating.
Cool.
And recording, Efe and Akushka. Dearest, we will have 1.5 hours. We have time to speak a lot more than in our bios, let's say. So please use that time like with joy and you know. And at the end, there will be questions and answers. Then I will direct the night to the party after closing the section. So please come to the party and dance with us also. And thank you everyone to being here with us, to collaborating with Through the Window and Club Coweed and Michael.
Yeah.
Shall we like start in 5 minutes if everyone is fine?
Perfect.
Any questions we have? All right.
So just for your knowledge, there's also Turkish interpretation.
Yeah. I will announce it.
Cool.
Yeah. I will start as always with you, Thorin, then I will give the mic to you. You look good.
I love your nails. Queer, sexy, intimidating.
I'm stealing.
So, shall we start accepting people? Efe'cim, bekleyenleri yavaş yavaş alalım istersen. Good luck everyone. Have a good time. Enjoy. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Oh, so exciting. Hello and good evening from Istanbul to everyone. This is Kübra Uzun from To The Window team. We just started our beloved projects like at the very beginning of the pandemic in 2020. And then with the support of Consulate Netherlands Istanbul, and with the second iteration, we got the lovely support of Prince Claus Foundation, and now we are having the third iteration again with their support. So we just start everything to create space for queer people, queer artists, queer thinkers, queer DJs who got stuck within the pandemic and whose exhibitions are canceled or whose clubs are closed and etc. And with Proud, we are having this lovely third iteration now, starting with that idea. So now I will be passing the mic to Simone, dear lovely Simone, to moderate our talk. And before, I wanted to underline that there will be simultaneous translation during the event. So you can choose your language by clicking on the globe icon below. Thank you, and Simone.
Kubra, my love, thank you so much. Hello, everybody. Hi. So today, my name is Simon or Simone, and today we're going to be talking about the creation of queer spaces. I want to start just because we're in a webinar. So if you're an audience member, we cannot see you, but we know you're there. And I just want to start us off with a shared moment of breathing, taking a breath together. And I invite you to feel your body wherever you are in this current moment, to really feel where you are while you are with us in this space. So I'm just going to take a breath with you all. All right. So I am currently in Berkeley, California. Berkeley, California, it means that it's 11 a.m. In the morning. And it also means that I'm on the unceded territory of Ohlone land, or the Ohlone people. But I'm not exactly sure if just that kind of place basing in terms of naming where you are in the US context, in the academic context, this is very well known, right? You start with a sort of statement where you are, and then also the occupational or the settler colonial location in some ways as a form of a statement. I'm not sure exactly if that statement as a sort of performance of like, this is where we are, we know that we're settler colonizers, if that's really enough. But I do really want to invite in this question of where are you currently, because we're going to be talking about queer spaces. So as I said, I am in Berkeley, California, which means I'm very close to a university, the University of Berkeley. And it's a campus that is indeed built only on stolen land. Not just is it built on stolen land, it's thriving because of settling land, right? That's how it gets its money still through gentrification practices. So for example, very close by, there's People's Park, which is a park where people have started living because they're houseless, they're made to be houseless. And People's Park is being bought up by the university to create campus housing, to create campus buildings. I'm saying that because at the same time, Berkeley historically is known for being like an LGBT haven, or San Francisco at least for sure, but Berkeley also because of its progressive history of freedom of speech, etc. And I just moved here from the Netherlands in August, and I have been pleased and surprised in some ways about the enormous amount of LGBT presence on campus and the queer clubs, etc. But I am obviously continuously wondering, what does it mean for a queer club to be on a campus that should not be here, and a campus that can only be here because of colonial capitalist structures that uphold that campus to be there. And I'm saying that because I'm thinking about Kim Tallbear's question. Kim Tallbear, an indigenous scholar, who says, queer in relationship to what? Queer in relationship to what? So a queer space may not be a queer space because queer people are in it. A queer space can only be something in relationship to its surrounding, the space, the structures that uphold a certain space. And I'm saying all of that as a kind of introduction to this conversation today. And we have 3 amazing artists and speakers here, which you will hear much more from than from me, hopefully. But I did want to bring that in to open up this question of what a queer space in relationship to what. So as we are going to be discussing today, these 3 artists who have amazing practices, who all create spaces for queer people, but not just for queer people, but also looking at how queerness questions space making itself, right? Because there's maybe potentially a difference between having a space for queer people and having spaces function queerly or something like that. That being said, I'm in doubt whether I should tell you that I'm sick or whether I should feel supported so much so by my lovely fly shirt that there's no reason to tell you that. Sometimes the performance keeps you up better than honesty, right? This is the differentiation between the performance queer and the tender queer. But I am sick, so I'll try and mute when I cough. And if I like completely lose it with me. That's what I'm saying. And I'm so happy. We're here with Melis Nots from Queerwaves and so many more. And we're here with Paula Chaves Bonilla. And we're here with DeLovie Kwagala. And they're amazing artists, and you're going to learn about them. And I also want to say to all of you that there will be space for questions after the introductions to their work. So please keep those questions with you and post them in the chat, or feel free to talk, and we would love to invite those in. Melis Nots, welcome.
Hello.
Hello. I just want to, as a brief introduction, like I was saying earlier, I'm not going to do the bios. We're going to learn about your practice from you, not from bio language. But maybe as an introduction to how you got here is that through the window, from its start at the beginning of the pandemic, March 2020, we have been collaborating with Queerwaves. Queerwaves has been fundraising for artists who didn't have any income because nightlife completely got canceled or shut down, I probably should say. And yeah, we've continuously been, I feel at least, been in touch with Queerwaves and vice versa to raise money in many different ways. But I really want to learn from you what Queerwaves is, how you started it together with other initiators, and what it means to you.
Question of my life. Yes, Queerwaves is like sanctuary for me, for myself, and for many friends in Istanbul. In 2014, me, Şevval Kılıç, maybe most of you know her, and Semih, 3 of us were partying all the time together. I was managing a bar before that, and we started doing parties. And bar unfortunately had to close due to economic issues after Gezi protests. Then we couldn't stop partying together. We thought that maybe, yeah, we can do other places, we can change them, and we can create new spaces for us to come together and party. Mostly after 2014, political changes in Turkey affected a lot queer community, especially for the events. They start banning some queer festivals, some coming together events. So partying was the only option for us to see each other sometimes. And as we already know how to party and how to change, we thought that we can start it doing it by like every month, 2 months. It depends on the availability. We started doing it. Mostly electronic events, because dance culture is going through these changes, and every places have their unique taste for the music. And for example, Sema and Şevval also, through these 8 years, I guess, they also self-taught themselves how to be a DJ. They learned how to use DJ setup. I learned a lot of things, how to use the lights correctly, how to change sound systems, or how to manage crowd in a bar or in an open space. And after 2015, especially when police attacked Istanbul Pride March, it got more and more hard to becoming together and having time. So parties were very important for us, for ourselves and for our friends, because when you can't have the same. You can go to a bar with your friends and have fun, and there are some cool places in Istanbul that you can go there and kiss your girlfriend or boyfriend, which would be okay, but still you would like to see some other people like you. So it's not possible to go there. And there are some, of course, gay clubs and mixed clubs for queer people in Turkey, but in terms of affordability, or if you, in terms of music style you choose, there are not many options. So people need spaces to go. So we are doing it since 8 years. During these times, I was also working in an international live music company as a production manager, which taught me a lot, because I went to a lot of music festivals, electronic music festivals, and some live concerts I did in Eastern Europe and Turkey mostly, which I always implement those learnings to queerwaves events. And it was very fun to decide a new kind of theme, or let's do it like that. Let's just have a party for, I don't know. Sorry, I partied last night, by the way. That's why I'm like that. But you can see the smile on my face, because I was with many queer people around me, and which makes you very happy in the morning. Even though you have a bad hangover, you also feel very good about it.
I think that Kubra was also there, right?
Yes. I think everybody was there, and it was very crowded and very good party. XSM Recordings and Sirean Collective, they did the party. We had fun. Anyway,
what is the collective? I just know that Kubra might want to say something about the collective as well.
Yes, XSM Recordings with Kubra and Mixture, they are doing together. They're their record label, which they're also organizing events. And Sirean says it's very kind of new. They just did the first edition last night and the other day. I think Nene H and Yunan is doing it from Turkey and Berlin, which they also aim to do DIY culture kind of events and free space and safe zone. This kind of concerns are very important, especially in Turkey. for Europe, for example, you go to parties and these kind of culture is already coming from background like 10, 20 years. And so it's very powerful and you feel always very safe and you can act however you want. In Turkey, I think last 5 years changed a lot even for queerwaves or other collectives, other DJs, clubs. Most of them are now more concerned about giving people safe feeling. How to understand? For example, it's not okay to record everyone while they are dancing. And these kind of practices are very new to Istanbul, for my opinion. For example, for queerwaves, through the many years, we were always careful about choosing people. Why choosing people? Because when you put the tickets on sale, everybody can buy this. And it's very important to bring people together who can understand each other, or just some people are coming for different kind of needs. Some just comes for dancing. Some others wants just to see performing. And mixing those needs, it's very important. And while you are doing it, it's very important to keep it safe, because even though there are nightlife is going around in Istanbul, for queer parties, it's not safe. You have to be very careful with the security. You have to be very careful with the club you are working, how they are working, their employees, how they approach people you brought there. For example, last year we had a party 2 years before, right in the middle of the pandemic. Some restrictions are lifted, so we can do the party. Somebody is writing something. I will reply this later. For example, for this party, I went to this open air space in Sarıyer, which mostly they are using it for the weddings, heterosexual weddings, of course.
Yeah. Wow.
I went there with my short pants, with my hairy legs, and all the butch aura I have. And at some point, there was a woman who is dealing with us, and she was showing us around. She was asking questions. And at some point, I told her, I will ask something. This is very important for me. For example, now your workers, the waiters around, are checking my legs because they are hairy, which I can understand because they never seen, or it's not very used to them. But are they going to look twice? Because it's okay, they can look once, because we are different, they are different. They should get used to it at some point. So she told me that, please don't worry anything about like that. We know how to handle this kind of events. And so that's why I did the event there. And it was fun, and everybody was free to wear what they want, or how to react, how they dance, or how they wear their hair, or what they do. And this kind of things very important. If you are choosing spaces to make events, you have to understand who is doing what and how they will respond to any kind of different feelings, like, because they didn't see and they are looking. That's okay, they can look once, but not twice, or not like staring. These kind of things are very boring and taking your energy from the party all the time. So
can
we are
I ask you how
spaces with this kind of
in terms of choosing these spaces, right? Like there's the sociality of indeed like asking somebody, are they gonna stare at us? But there's also a material question there. How do you choose spaces, in the sense of, do you pay for the spaces previous to the pandemic, or do you get them donated, right? Because that's also this question of, sometimes you are welcomed anywhere as long as you pay. At least in the Netherlands, this is especially true, right? And so, but then you have to start refusing spaces where you're welcomed, because the welcoming is a monetary welcoming. And I just wonder if these spaces are donated. Yeah.
No, unfortunately. Maybe I can just give a small detail about how queerwaves events works. We are making the budgets for the minimum amount as much as possible. We are putting the rent money, workers, all the needs. We are preparing the budget, and because it's important to make it affordable. Life is getting super expensive, and going out, getting in a club, it's very expensive practices in Istanbul, unfortunately. So we are making it as much as minimum we can do, and most of the friends who cannot afford, they are coming as a guests, of course. They are not paying. And the money talks. Yes, you are right. To go place and find the place who can afford your needs in terms of sound and toilets, bars, and all of the things they have, it's expensive. We were lucky because of the pandemic. There were no weddings, so they gave us a good rent. It wasn't very expensive, but we didn't earn any money. I paid some of it from my pockets also, which I was okay with it at the time because I was earning my money from my daily job. The moment that I realized that 150 people there was 150 people at that event on July of 2020, in the middle of the pandemic. I was like, hi. I wasn't on any drugs or anything. I felt high because seeing everyone around, running each other, dancing together, like after 6-7 months stuck in at home, it was magical for me. And this feeling gives you the energy to do the next one and the next one, because you are seeing many friends who you didn't see for a long time. That was the moment. So we did again next month.
Yeah. I mean, that also, it makes me want to ask you about the political surge or energy that thrives in the party, right? In terms of how, of course, when you're saying July 2020, 150 people, there might be people who are like, well, that's not safe because of the pandemic. And this question of like, what is safe, right? Like in relationship to care and in relationship to queer spaces and the possibility, this is also why Through the Window was called Through the Window, right? Like through the window, looking through the window for those who have a home. But what does it mean if you're on the other side of the window? And I'm sort of wondering also because of what happened during the pandemic, right? And I probably paraphrase it incorrect in terms of the timeline, but maybe you can say more, Melis. What happened is that nightlife was closed down, of course, as everywhere in the beginning, but then when we're starting to open up again, the government didn't allow for nightlife to start up again, which, to be fair, also happened in the Netherlands. And for example, there was a drinking, like a curfew to buy alcohol after 8 p.m. But in the Netherlands, it was sort of, because of the sort of complacency of people, I guess, there was sort of this idea, well, okay, that makes sense, because if people get drunk, they start to hug each other. In Istanbul and in Turkey, there was an actual response, like a political response to the closing down of nightlife, where it was like, well, this is another measure against queer people and their well-being and safety. Can you say more about that?
For example, for this event we did in the pandemic, we chose open air because of that reason. We adapted, actually. We used to make the parties at clubs and closed indoor spaces. And when pandemic started, we jumped to the screens. We did some online parties. We adapted again. And when some restrictions lifted, we found an open air space. We got all the measures told them to Can you hear me? I'm sorry. I have
we
a
missed. Yeah, for a moment you had a glitch there.
I had a
That's cool.
glitch. How am I now? You can't hear.
Your hair looks beautiful.
Thank you. So it's always about adapting the changes because otherwise you can't survive. And Şevval has a say. One of our interviews, Şevval said that you can örgütlenmek, you can become together and take action at the parties too. You don't have to drink tea in the morning, or you don't have to go to cafes, because dancing together is also form of resistance. Because you are dancing, you are here, you are happy despite of every shit going around and every bad news you are getting every day. People got killed and every bad shit. You still have energy to dance together and smile at each other. That's very important for Turkey and Istanbul since Gezi, I guess.
Maybe this would be a good moment to also invite Kubra in to say something more about last night. As you were saying, you haven't slept, so you're still oozing this energy through the Zoom.
I feel good and actually proud and very happy because I mean the night as what we imagine, what we dream to build on, like it was like a big success. Because also Melis told, I mean, the safe space and having fun with people around you on those safe places with good music and with like solidarity projects, like combined into the own project is something. XSM means ex-stepmother. It's a label actually founded by Mixer, Çağlar Sür. And with XSM parties, me and Big Guy are also involved with the parties. So we are trying to create safe spaces and like also we have DJs, queer DJs and performers we support and give space on our nights. And also the designer of the poster also has, and it changes every time, from party to party, also has an exhibition in the space. So it's like a party, kind of a party and an exhibition and gathering space, safe space for we queers, like also queerwaves do. And we're proud of doing and creating those hubs in Istanbul. I mean, there are so few spaces where we can go and, have freely fun and share and etc. So proudly XSM is also trying to create one of those spaces.
And then I want to tie what Melis was saying in with what you're saying, Kubra, with a question that came in through the chat from Sanna Pols, who's also a queer space creator in Amsterdam, organizing the LGBT tours. And we also had Sanna as a guest in last year. Which would be about, and then we should go to D for a little bit, which would be about the sort of structural question in relationship to space make, or like safe space making, right? So when you're saying we're creating safe spaces, can you, again, thinking also about what Melis was saying about, for example, not recording, can you sort of go through a few of the steps that you're taking to create this idea of safety, right? Like, whose safety? What does it mean? What does it mean in terms of invitation, for example? Do you do only door sale tickets? Do you not do any ticket sale? Is it only through word of mouth? Like, what are the sort of structural steps that you take in order to create an idea of safety and thereby the actual atmosphere?
Yeah, Melis.
Okay.
Please, you go.
Before the pandemic, we were not doing any pre-sales, mostly at the door, but there was always someone from our team who can understand people and who knows the community. After the pandemic, unfortunately, capacities of the events got smaller for us. That's why we started giving people ticket links only with references. If you don't have any reference from our community or someone we don't know, we ask them some questions. For example, some people are asking, I want to attend this event, I want to get a ticket link. We are asking them if they have any reference from our community or the event organizers. Some say, I don't, but I want to come. Then we ask them, can you please tell us more about yourself? Because if someone is open about, of course, they don't need to tell us their real name or home address, but if they say that they are how they represent themselves on the chat, even says a lot about these people's behavior. Because if they say something about themselves, even though that they don't have to say they are queer, or they don't have to say how old they are, just say something. And many people respond that very well. And some of them also joined the parties. We don't know them, but we got to know each other and we danced together. And next party, they were saying, I went to this party, you see me this video, on this video, I'm running there. So they are coming the next one.
Yeah, I mean, with these parties and spaces, we are trying to share the awareness of ambition, and also like the main things like as consent and discrimination. There is no allowance in our parties, of course, as it should be, and freedom of expression and freedom of surveillance is our main keys when we are organizing XSM parties, and we have to respect to each of us and every performer all night. So it's happening. Like, I mean, I'm very happy about what we had last night, or since last 3 parties, and it's getting like more connected and more safer as a feeling, and
organic.
You know, organic. It is really organic, and proudly also, as queerwaves do, we have a merch. Actually, XSM Recordings' first EP was Alan 2020. It's a queer rap written by me, sang by me, and produced by Mixer. It was the first release of the XSM Recordings, and then we start a merch. T-shirt merch. I will share the link also. Melis, maybe you want to share queerwaves link also from the chat box. So with the sales, more than the half of the budget is going to Hande Kader Solidarity, which support trans students in Turkey. So those are the things that we are proud to have and involved with, and you know, start that chain of solidarity. Actually, I mean, our friends are ours. No one support us if we are not there. So we always have to be there for all of us.
From this, I would like to tell people how Queerwave is also doing merch. Why doing it? During the pandemic, since all the clubs are closed, we also saw that we don't have anyone to support us. Many performers, bar workers, DJs, they didn't have any state support because of their undocumented paying, and they just left alone. They don't have any money income, so we quickly adapted again to the situation and open an online funding for people who lost their income due to clubs closed, mostly performers, DJs, and bar workers. In 2 years, we distributed this money to everyone in need. With 5 people, we shared details also with the public time to time, how much money spent, how much money sent to how many people. People changed all the time. For example, 1 month, 8 people needed money. These are very small amounts, by the way, But even this helped them a lot to buy some groceries or pay their bills, very minimum amounts. And this showed me, yes, we don't have anyone else other than each other. And after that, we start thinking about how to make money more to support each other. With this thought, we also started queerwaves brand, merchandise brand for t-shirts, sweatshirts, bags, some necklace, many designs we are having. We are working with queer artists. We are helping each other and making it bigger together. And at this time, 3 of the t-shirts, for example, this income, all the incomes coming from these t-shirts, going to the people who are in need and who is also part of the process, artists and designers. These kind of things before, for me, it wasn't important. I was saying, oh, we should party. Let's not talk about this. Let's not be capitalist. This kind of thoughts I had before. But after a while, especially with the pandemic, this showed me that, yes, we don't have anyone else. We have to support each other. Unfortunately, money is another way of supporting, and it's very important, especially with this kind of countries. You don't have economical support from anyone. So also we started this queerwaves brand, and it's very fun to ask friends, let's do this, and becoming together, producing something together, and sharing ideas, and making small touch for queer community, which they can find themselves in it when they wear it or taking themselves at the streets, which is also making me happy what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's like a flagging on the street. And also when you're saying alone, it's interesting because I remember so much that people in the Netherlands, for example, were selling hand-sewn masks when we still thought that was protective. And, fundraising through that for queer waves. I want to invite Dee into the conversation.
Yes.
Thank you, Melis. Thank you so much. And we can circle back around in a minute. Yeah.
Thanks.
Dee Kwagala, do you want to join the stage? When we invited Dee, so as a side note, we have always, as Through the Window, invited queer artists in Turkey and in the Netherlands. We each year invited 5 artists, and they then also invite each another artist. So that way we eventually have 10 artists from the Netherlands and 10 artists from Turkey. But this year, because we have amazing support from the Prince Claus Fund, they have an award, the Seed Awards. And that means that artists can apply from all over the world. They can apply for support. And together with Dilara, who works at the Prince Claus Fund and who is amazing, we got to have the opportunity to also invite people like Dee. So we invited 5 Seed Award artists from all over. So we're leaving, we were already doing the transnational, whatever, we're online now anyway. And now, location, what is it even? What is it, right? Queer in relationship to what? And we immediately really wanted to invite Dee. Their photography work is amazing. And we were in awe seeing their work. Please check out their Instagram. Please Google them. But when we invited Dee, they were like, yeah, cool, but also no, because I want to invite 2 other people. I would like to give, the funding that's available through the window to other artists who might not have landed, for example, in the Seed Awards, right? So they immediately passed on the invitation. While we thought that we are always creating a stage for people to pass on an invitation, Dee was like, no, but we need to pass on the invitation. And that's how we were like, okay, Dee really needs to be part of this conversation about space creation, because that was such an immediate gesture of space creation, for which thank you so much, Dee. And thank you so much for being here. And do you want to share about your practice as a photographer? Maybe you want to say something about where you are currently, just thinking about where you are in a space. We see a flag, but there must be more to it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor, and I'm really pleased. In Johannesburg, South Africa, and yeah, I'm Ugandan by nationality. I'm here for like a year. I'm working on a fellowship actually with a queer project about intimate partner violence. That is another conversation. My practice is mainly photography and videography. I prefer to call myself a photographer, but I'm also an activist. So I am the first non-binary queer photographer in Uganda, and we all know how homophobic Uganda is. It's literally like at the top, in the top homophobic countries. So, but with resilience and, you know, a lot of like motivation to share our voices and to be heard, you know, through our stories and experiences other than just the trauma porn, you know, it's what inspired me to keep, you know, pushing and speaking up even when, you know, that is a huge risk. And talking about safety and creating space, I feel like from where I come from, is just like you are on your own, you know, a lot of times. And for me, you know, growing up, it was like there's no role model, there's no one to look up to, no one to inspire you. It's just like you're a lost baby queer that doesn't have any direction, you know, in that sense. And since everything, you know, like homosexual is censored in Uganda, it just like makes it really, really difficult for people to kind of navigate their identities and sexualities and stuff. And for me, what inspired me to actually start photography is that like there was a lot of people that were parachuting in my country to kind of like, you know, interview us about like, you know, the mob justice or like the harassment or the injustice that is, you know, affecting us. So like when there's big issues of like mob people that have been mobbed or like, you know, killed or beaten or imprisoned on false accounts. And I felt like, you know, when they came through, it was more about like, what is your story? Tell me now, I'm flying out tomorrow, you know? And I just felt like there was never like, what was left out of that conversation. It was more about like, hey, I have access, give me what I need, and then I'll leave. And then it didn't matter how we were left feeling in those moments. It's just like, I got what I want, and then, you know, like you're on your own. And so what that meant is like people were forced, you know, not necessarily forced, but like put in a position where they can't say no to sharing or relieving their traumas, you know, which then just made it difficult to stay with this huge gap, you know, within yourself after literally like relieving the trauma of like something really bad that happened. And for me, I came in, I'm like, hey, we are here, we're queer, and, you know, we need to celebrate us. And that's when I started with a project called the Kingdom. And the Kingdom is kind of like this imaginary world space, you know, safe space where people can be themselves even for that moment, you know, through the session of photography, that boys can wear dresses, you know, like they can have makeup, they can wear pink, they can be whoever they want, you know, and not just that, and also vice versa. And so like that's where like I started, you know, like with the photography and the activism, because I just felt like I had a lot of rage and a lot to say. And not only me, but also like the people that have, you know, constantly been participating in my projects as well. And I wanted to show the side of like, you know, resilience and strength and courage and bravery, you know, through documenting our authenticity, regardless if you know, like regardless that like our freedom in itself is a pain, you know, it's literally crazy to think about that you always have to watch your back because safety is such a priority. And through even creating those images, it's just like I literally wanted to just go out on the streets and blast, streets with rainbow and glitter, because, that's how my heart was feeling. I wanted to show these people that we're here. But at the end of the day, like, these are things that you need to know that are not possible, because then you're endangering yourself and the participants. And so safety was always, and is still always, like a thing that you have to think about, like constantly. Where am I taking the photos from? What am I doing? Is there like enough security? Is there like, do we have enough allies to kind of like, cover for us and all of that? So I guess that's where like the creation of space also started, because even within my practice in itself, I let my participants, be the directors, of how they want to show themselves, how do they want to be perceived. I feel like the recurring question that, because like when you're in front of the camera, it's such like, an intimidating tool, and you kind of like sometimes get into a performative, routine or like situation. But what I always tell them is just like, hey, you pause, show up as you want the world to be, to perceive you. And I guess that is a game changer, because in that moment, even when you don't realize it, you're creating a safe space for this person to show up as they are, even if it's for a moment. And those images are the ones that, like, if someone from the community, from outside the community sees those images, they're gonna feel a familiar sense of, relatability, or even recognition when they see an image like that, and later a person in, like in real life who is dressed like that or acting like that, And I guess that's where like the creation of space came from. And when I was, like I was welcome to be a part of Through the Windows, I was really, really excited, And honestly, the opportunities, for queer people are like very limited. And even for me, I won't say like I didn't want the money. I wanted the money. I wanted the money, but at the same time, I'm like, if you guys reached out to me, that means that I have made an impact. That means you know my name already, right? That means you've seen my work. But then I'm like, regardless of me needing the money, but like, what impact can I make through this collaboration? And then like, I thought about like, the people like in my life that have been, like kind of like wanting to do something, like, to come out, to kind of like put themselves up at the front. And it's just reminding ourselves that we rise by lifting others, If there's a saying, I don't know if it's like, I'm saying it right, but it's like, if you want to go far, like you go together or something like that. And for me, that resonates a lot within my work and like, within my life as well, because apart from having to kind of create like safe spaces, like mentally and physically for queer people, but there is a lot of gatekeeping within the artist community as well, like people get opportunities, and even if they're not available to take on such opportunities, they will still just, like decline from there. But like, it could be like a very effortless thing to just be like, hey, I'm turning this down. But at the same time, this person, putting our names, on the table where we are known, it's such like an important thing, because it then empowers others to show up and take up space as well. I think I just rambled and kind of like went off the grid.
Not at all, not at all. I want to ask you a question about visibility and the tool of the camera in relationship to maybe sustainability, right? What you were saying before, like, oh, tell me now, I'm going to fly out tomorrow. But before I ask you that question, I want to ask you if you wanted to tell a little bit about the two artists that you proposed to invite.
So the two artists that I proposed to invite are such, like two dear friends, and also like people who have, struggled just like me to kind of like, create like a sense of visibility for their work as well. And I remembered when I was just starting out, as I say, like there was no motivation, there was no inspiration. It's just like you're starting from scratch, like you're the first one. So you literally like have a lot of responsibility and a lot more to navigate, when it comes to that. And I didn't have anyone. No one ever showed up and handed me like, a silver platter that here you go, like, this is how you can navigate this. There was no information And I felt like I didn't want that for anyone else. I knew that I was in a position of power, in that moment, to kind of like pass that on to people who I knew they had potential, to also create exactly what I would have created, even more, into the space. And we're talking about collaboration and solidarity and getting together and community, strengthening the community of queer, like queer people, queer artists and all of that. And Munira, they are non-binary as well. They are, like they have been in the arts industry for like the longest time. They started photography, but they just often felt like, they have a story to tell, but at the same time, there was no outlet, and also like with the inflation of the economy, you just find yourself like literally having no money to spare to do anything that you're interested in. And I feel like that I resonate with a lot, because when I didn't have anyone to support me, I literally was working 2 jobs in order to support and facilitate the personal projects that I was working on, under scrutiny, under safety, under like tight security and all of that. But I was able to do that because I was like, okay, I was in a position to have those 2 jobs, to be able to carry that forward. But like, not everyone has the privilege to do that, and I didn't want that for anyone. I was like, hey, if I can be able to create a space in this moment, this is what I can do. It's not much, but at the same time, it goes a long way. And I think also, honestly, the biggest thing as to why I did it is I wanted them to be able to put like a one foot into the possibility of actually also applying for the Prince Claus Seed Award. You know what I mean? Because I was like, my name is already there, but like if these people start here, and their name, like Prince Claus is also a part of this. If their name like hits there and they're like, oh, they participated through the window, that is already like a leverage for them to get in and get like that money, Literally, that was like one of the things that I was thinking about, because I'm like, you need to get this money to actually like lay it out with the projects, like ideas and visions that you want to carry forward. And the other person is also Bongiwe. Bongiwe is also like a really, really good friend, like I've known them for quite a while. And like when I was still like, at the Market for Workshop, they really carried me through tough times. It's just like one of the people that I always looked forward, to connecting with on that level, because, times were tough. Like everything was really, really crazy. I have an 8-year-old, so I was parenting, I was schooling, and I was working, and everything was hectic and in a new country. So everything was crazy, and they were there, and I was like, what else can I do in the sense of like giving back, and that's how they came to be a part of the project. They have things to say, they have voices, and I feel like they needed a platform to be able to share that.
That's really wonderful. And I very much share your hope of, in this sense, money expanding itself, and that has been like one of the biggest joys of Through the Window, is people who participated in one year and then other people participating in the next year, meeting up and collaborating together, or meeting each other in person for the first time. I've even got to witness that, and that has been wonderful. So totally share your hope. And I'm still going to ask you that question around visibility, but now when you said something about being the first, right? I want to ask another question before I ask that one question, which is now becoming a weird cliffhanger, which it's not. But I realize now, because of what you were just saying, that I hesitated introducing you as the first non-binary queer photographer in Uganda, because something that has been happening with this question of first, right? And maybe this is particularly the US context, or because what happens is that when somebody claims to be the first, right, or sometimes first is being projected upon, by which I mean that sometimes there's this sort of narrative like, oh, where are all these queer people coming from? Oh, nowadays everybody is non-binary. And of course, then the struggle becomes to show that no, there's so many examples in history of people who might not have called themselves non-binary because there were so many other terms, but there is no such thing as being new or first, or being a hip phenomenon. It is actually the erasure of these histories that has created you to believe that we are marginalized, right? So I'm just wondering how you relate to claiming that term first, and if that's something that in the Ugandan context is also happening in terms of how it's also about undelving these histories that have been erased.
So basically, like when it comes to the visibility of that, I understand that is like a big term of like, you know, coming out and be like I have been the first, you know, and like what I like to say is that, like I've been the first openly queer, you know what I mean? Like, because when you say openly, it changes like the whole narrative, right? Because at the end of the day, and I'm not saying that like there's no others, but like being openly queer in a super homophobic country comes with its own, you know, like risks, right? And if we are going to take up the risks, then we might as well, you know, like in the sense like own it, you know what I mean? And that's like for me where like the inspiration to carry that title comes from, because like there's a risk, like there's a lot of risk, you know, like as I mentioned, like I have a child, you know, and I constantly have to worry about the safety of that child in the context of the decisions that I make, you know, about my work, about like the projects that I'm making, about, you know, like all of these other aspects of like creation, you know, and basically because I have mainly done like, you know, queer work in the sense of like, you know, I have worked with like multiple organizations, you know, to kind of like, you know, bring like mental health services to like the queer people, especially in the pandemic when there was no facilities, no resources, nothing that was coming. And we had to, you know, put it in our own hands and like create WhatsApp groups so we can communicate within each other and check on everyone and kind of see like how everyone is doing. So I feel like, yes, there's the connotation of erasure of history, but at the same time, in this case, like, I want to own the sacrifices, you know, I want to own the risks that I've taken to get here, you know, because I feel like also this shows through my work, you know, like my work is literally like, you know, the first of its kind. And also, I guess, like, you know, what gave me the courage to kind of carry that forward is because recently, I think like by the end of last year, I did win the East African Photography Award, you know. This is an award that has been, you know, like it's with the Uganda Press, Uganda Photo Press Awards, I think. And it's been running for 10 years, you know, and within those 10 years, not any openly queer photographer, you know, has won that. And also certainly not with the queer projects, because the project that I submitted was intimate partner violence through the cracks. You know, this is like when there was a rise of like, you know, intimate partner violence and domestic violence within, you know, like the pandemic, because people ended up at like places where they had never been, you know, with people that they were literally just, you know, maybe fooling around with. And so that like the cases were going up, and because I was in close relation and communication with the people, you know, with like a lot of the community and the people that are always participating in my projects, I extended a question of being like, are you okay? Really? How are you really? You know? And the responses to that with disheartening is just like, you sometimes forget that if you have a shelter under your head and living in a safe space, that like, you know, everyone else has that privilege, but it's not the same, you know? Some people ended up being at home where like parents didn't even accept them. So the abuse was intense. And for me, like through the communications that we were like arranging mental health services and like, you know, trying to bring resources closer to the people within the community, it also like, you know, this is where the project came from. Oh my God, what happened?
We can hear you, your camera is off.
Oh shit, I think maybe it was like burning up. You're or back. Something.
You're back.
Yeah, so that's where like the project through the cracks came through, you know, just like through the windows. It's like through the cracks of like, you know, what are we seeing from the outside? What is this person letting us see? And like, you know, the stories were really painful, you know. You can find the project, you know, like on my website. It's called Through the Cracks, and you can see the stories of people who are, you know, survivors of this, you know, like violence that was like put on them. And I feel like, again, I strongly believe that, you know, like for the work that I've done on the ground in Uganda, for, you know, like the advocacy and the activism that I've, you know, pushed forward, and for the fact that, again, no one has come forward to be like, oh, but you're not the first, I am. I guess like it just gives me the motivation to kind of like, you know, own it, because again, I have, you know, worked and like faced a lot to be here, you know.
There's something about what you said about Through the Cracks, and when you said, "Are you okay?" that reminded me of the flags that are up in the San Francisco airport. If you go to the bathroom, to the restroom here, and in the airport, there's this flag that says, "Are you okay?" in different languages, and it's basically border control. Asking you whether you're being trafficked. Are you okay? And I always want, when I see this, I'm always sort of laughing, because I'm like, as if the border control is the one that would offer safety if you are not okay. And so I'm wondering, when you said, "Are you okay?" there was something that touched me. I felt the question. And then I was like thinking critically about that, you know, thing in the airport. And it made me wonder about whether it matters who is behind the camera. And that brings me then to the question that I was, you know, trying to pose earlier, or didn't pose, which is about the tool of the camera. And I really want to hear you talk about how you relate to the camera as a tool with its history of violence, also in terms of making people visible, making certain people visible, using the camera as a tool of propaganda also, right, in relationship to certain violences, especially projected at the African continent, right, the way that the camera has been used, but also, and you can answer wherever you find an entry point, of course. I'm just sort of rambling all the questions together, but also this question of visibility, right? The idea that visibility would free us, where you also mentioned this word trauma porn, right? Often it's not liberation. Visibility is commodification. So I really want to hear how you relate to that. Yeah.
Before I answer that question, I think, like, you know, just a little reflection onto the "Are you okay?" really. I feel like also because, you know, like, as I said, like, what inspired me to get into this is to be able to like create space on, like, you know, a trust-based, you know, like human interest, you know, level, because my projects that I work on, like with the community, are not just a walk through the park. It's just like, I take my time to gain the trust of these people, you know, like within the community members as well. It's just like, it's over time, it grows, you know, like so that like you've created a solid, you know, relationship, like there's trust, so that in the context of that question, then it feels more safer landing, or like coming from that context, like on the receiving end, because what I was meaning like to ask is like, are you okay where you are? You know what I mean? Is everything okay? Like, are you okay? So it also, like, because of the trust that we established, then they were able to open up and be like, hey, you know, actually, this is what's happening, and this is what's happening. And also because, particularly with that project, myself, I'm also like a survivor of intimate partner violence, you know, with my very first partner. And like, I remember in those moments when it was happening to me, like, I didn't have anyone to talk to, you know. I remember trigger warning, what, like, my ex-partner, like, being really drunk and coming and like, you know, possibly asking for sex, and like my housemate was there, and she literally proceeded to rape me, and I was fighting, you know, like fighting, and I was like getting my friends' attention. I'm like, hey, can you help me? And they're like, but, you know, she's your girlfriend, so what does it matter? You know what I mean? So there was no resources, there was no one to talk to, there was no organizations, and you can't report this because it's not like gender-based violence, because gender-based violence, which is actually supposed to be an umbrella for all of the violence that happens within intimate partner violence, but there's just like this connotation that it's just heterosexual, you know what I mean? And so like that's where it goes, all the resources go there, leaving us on the line scraping for even people to hear us. Because even within the community, you find there is a lot of stigma and alienation when you come out and say like, my girlfriend beat me, you know, they'll see you as weak or whatever, but because of like the stigma that is so much, like even the people who are going through it, they're not, you know, like willing to speak about it. So going to the question about like the camera and the visibility and stuff, I think for me, it's important to understand, you know, take your time and understand where people are coming from, you know. Yes, there's like a lot of things that we're fighting for as a queer community, you know, especially in Uganda. It's just like the freedom of expression, you know, like the discrimination, you know, against us when it comes to health services, and everything. Honestly, like it's a struggle. Every day is like a fight. It's just like, you know, you have to fight for everything. And also just really be resilient. We've lost a lot of people to suicide because they couldn't just take it. You know, it's a lot. They put a lot of pressure on you. And I don't think that it's a good way to just come in and because you are in a position of like in a privileged position to have the access to that particular person and just solicit the story from them, you know, without thinking about the aftermath, without thinking about the trauma that like the impact, you know, of like your being there, of your camera as well. Because as I say, like, you know, the camera can be like a very intimidating tool. So you're not even giving this person enough time to, you know, like, you know, get used to you being there, you know, get used to you taking photos of them. But at the same time, you want it now and then because that's what is required of you, you know. I feel like that causes a lot of like, you know, mental health, you know, issues because like people left depressed, you know, you go through a traumatic thing and then someone the next day is there to, you know, like tell your story and they're telling you to relive the moments of that. Like imagine what that does to your brain. You know what I mean? It's just like, I believe in like literally treating people with respect and dignity, regardless of where they're coming from, regardless of their circumstances, regardless of however much power you have, you know, like over them. Because at the end of the day, we all scraping around to stay, you know, like less stressed, to like not have the depression and have to deal with, you know, the mental health issues that need a lot of therapy, you know, and therapy is expensive and inaccessible. So people are left with these wounds, you know, no way to let it out, no way of healing. Is just like continuous because again, even given the circumstances of their situations, they don't even have the time to actually process what happened before moving on to the other thing, because at the end of the day, they still have to survive, right? So with respect to, you know, like understanding that the camera is not just a camera, it's a power play, it's an intimidating tool, it's, you know, it solicits performance because you're not getting the real story. You're just getting what you want to get through this person, you know, and leaving and going back to your life. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of like pieces that are left unopened and pieces that are left, boxes that are left unchecked or checked for the formality of it, you know. So yes, with visibility also comes a lot. I think that's what many people don't understand, that with visibility also comes with a lot of responsibilities that you should always honor and understand where the other person is coming from, you know, and not just, you know, feel like it's okay for you to put down your opinion, you know, onto someone else's life and experience, because it's not fair. This is how we're breaking the cycle, you know, we're empowering each other to show up and like, you know, process and, you know, like take up space in many ways. But like, if you're not empowering that person that you're photographing that is in front of you, then what is the use of your story? What message are you trying to communicate, you know? Yeah.
Thank you so much. Is there anything you want to raise before we invite Paula into the conversation for now?
I just really want to say, I want to share how grateful I am to be able to be here with great minds and, people that are doing such great work, in different countries. It's like really, we are in a way, like Through the Window is creating such an intimate space, like safe space for sharing, for understanding, for collaboration, for solidarity, for community, and, for us to actually also exchange ideas on how, we can better, carry forward, for the sake of our community and for ourselves as well. So I just wanted to say thank you, really. This being here really means a lot to me, and it honestly makes my heart dance. So gratitude.
Resonating with that. Thank you so much, Dee. Similar to Dee, actually, Paula Chaves Bonilla, when we invited Paula, I think it was the first iteration of Through the Window. They're becoming so many, I don't remember. Paula also invited an artist in, Sundari Fernandez, and they made a work together. And sorry, there was a glitch again. They made a wonderful film together. So good. I think maybe somebody can post it in the chat, as we have been posting also some of the artists that have been mentioned. And Through the Cracks, we can also post that, of course. So keep an eye on the chat. Also, if you are listening in, please feel free to post a question. We might have a little bit of time. We might not at all, but then still the questions are there. Paula, we invited Paula in as an artist, as a performer, choreographer, and that was for the Through the Window. And now we really wanted to invite Paula also as a member of the Queer Papaya. Or I keep turning it around. Is it Papaya Kuir or Queer Papaya? Papaya Kuir, right? Yeah. And I really love for you, Paula, to describe. I can read out what it is, but I think that you should tell us what Papaya Kuir is, and then maybe we can talk about your practice as well. And welcome, Paula.
Hi, everyone. It was lovely to hear also Melis and Dee before me. So I feel privileged also now. Like I have some tips and thanks for being brave and throwing yourself before me. I also want to say that my name is now, I go by Pau or Paula. You can also try Pau. I'm still getting used to it, so you can insist and I'll be happy about it. I'm currently in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam at the moment, also in terms of geography and understanding the complexities of me being a migrant. I'm in Colombia, but I'm inhabiting the territory also in my body. I'm also carrying Colombia within me in how I speak, and this is also the same with Papaya Kuir. There was something that I want to start with kind of complexifying one of the questions that you were bringing at the beginning. That was like, do you have a place to sleep, to party, to hang out? And then kind of like going back to the beginning of where Papaya started, it was also like, do I have a place? Do we have people that we can hang out with, that understands our experiences, that share our disorientation? And the answer was no. So that was also for me sort of a waking up moment. I have been living here in the Netherlands for 10 years, and since the beginning been involved in grassroots organizing. But around 2017, I started also kind of wanting to intersect that also with my origin, with Colombia, and also understanding more like what it is to be queer and to be Latina. And then starting to organize, it was sort of the unofficial beginning of Papaya Kuir, starting to organize parties. Also to support artists that were traveling from Latin America to Europe and wanting to tour in kind of like DIY autonomous space. So it was a way also to host them, to pay them a little bit of money, to give them a stage to perform, to give them housing and to connect also for them and also for me and for us to reconnect back and have this direct conversation with Latin America, let's say. And then in 2000, yeah, so, and then in 2000, so in 2020, actually, yeah, the video that you mentioned, Simone, it was like the, yeah, sort of also the beginning of Papaya Kuir, that was end of 2020. And it got accentuated. So also this need to officialize the collective came out also out of the yeah, the isolation and the dissociation that being queer and also being migrant in terms of a crisis was for me living in the Netherlands. It was very dissociating again, like what is this in between, like because I am not fully when I'm here, I'm also not fully here when it was the pandemic here. It was very unsettling to see people still like, yeah, the shops were closed, but people were still like, there was sort of a normality and like a luxuriousness to like people getting money to stay at home, and me perceiving simultaneously the situation of Colombia and people putting out like red flags because they don't have food and like no, but like, so that was the space that the frozen space that I was in, and in this need of connection. Then there was also this awakened moment, because it's like, yeah, honestly, it hasn't been easy to find a community here, partly because of the ambiguity of like what the whole Latin American context means, and for people it's very easily as like when you are Latino, right? We're partly European, we're partly Afro, we're partly indigenous. So for a lot of people, they choose the path of assimilating into like a European lineage and not wanting to associate themselves with being marginalized. In the sense that they deactivate, or like they don't work in activity spaces because they ascribe to something where they don't need to do that, right? So that's one of the things that has been difficult in terms of organizing as the Latino. That's always for me as a, you know, the love hate of like, yeah, we're like of where people position themselves as Latino and what is the lineages that you're following. And then it was like, yeah, where it's actually my people? Well, they are in the streets or in the refugee camps because again, like following the ambiguity of like of the Latin American context. So in Latin America, it is legal to be queer, it is legal to be trans. But what does legal means? It means like, yeah, that in papers is legal, but the reality in real life doesn't always resemble this. I'm generalizing, not in every Latin American country is legal, but mostly of Latin American countries, this is the situation. And what happens is that when the government sort of legalized the status of being queer, the society takes in its hands the right to police people. So the amount of gender-based violence, of transphobia, of queerphobia that happens in the street is it's really big. And so people migrate to ask for asylum here, but because of the whole like geopolitical landscape, Latin America is not right, like it doesn't fall into this scope of the Islam, the other, they are the ones that are homophobic. No, we are like, because we are this bastardic identity of Europe. So it's like, no, but you can actually like, you don't have to ask papers because you can go back to your country and it's legal and it's safe to be there, right? So people stay in a limbo of, and this is also sort of the, you know, Limbos Paralegales is the name of this documentary that we did with Sondari back then, or like video work. Because people stay here in a limbo. People stay for many. One of the main members of our community, a really badass trans Latina from Mexico, has been here 4 years, almost 5 years. Like, she does crazy amount of work for the community. She still doesn't have a house. She just got for the third time a no So she's, you know, like it means, so when you have like also, now that we became an organization and got subsidized, like when you have the status of like refugee, you actually have quite some rights. When you are undocumented, you're fucked. You don't have any right whatsoever. It's very difficult. So these are sort of the complexities and ambiguities and landscape that are kind of the foreground of how we organize as a community. So yeah, so funnily enough, like also hearing hearing Dee and hearing Melis about like how it's to be the difficulty of being queer, the danger of being queer in Turkey, in Uganda, in the Netherlands suddenly becomes the migrant is the dangerous. Like you can be queer, it's totally fine because we are the wave, we are the center, the epicenter of freedom, right? The Netherlands is sort of sold geopolitically as that. But being a migrant, that's definitely something you cannot be. And like, you know, so that's in the intersection that we are, the friction that we are, that we are working.
Yeah, that also makes me wonder about sort of the when you were saying about not having rights being undocumented and like how to organize around that. Like I was thinking about through the window and the way that, for example, that we can distribute funds unofficially, but of course there's this performance of the official towards art funding, right? So there is a question also like being in the Dutch context. And I'm also relating this to Papaya Kuir getting a subsidy. And I'm curious how that works for you. And just to finish sort of the sentence, instead of assuming that everybody knows what I'm talking about, the way in which you were just talking about the Netherlands and like how homo-nationalism works in the sense that, right, like the Netherlands loves giving funding to queers because it's an international export product of the Netherlands to be like, we are a safe haven. And that's also how we can be anti-migration and right-winged, etc. And so there is always like also for Through the Window, right, as a project, there's always this sort of tension that you're walking where you're both like sort of kneeling to the idea that, okay, we want this art funding. So yes, you know, here we celebrate the queers. And then sort of taking that money and sort of thinking about how to distribute that and like how to do that amongst ourselves, which is, I think, also a differentiation that came up talking with Dee about, you know, who asking the question, how do we ask the question, how are you doing? Who asks the question, are you okay? And so I just wanted to, sorry for the very long sort of winding around introduction, but I just wanted to ask you, Paul, about how for you with Papaya Kuir subsidy works and how becoming more official as a group works and how it works within the collective. So you have like the question to, I don't know where you get subsidy, maybe it's the Dutch government or it's Amsterdam municipality funding.
Yeah.
Amsterdam, yeah. So then there's this communication towards Amsterdam and there's like the inside of the collective and how those relationships are built and how money flows there and how the question of space works within the collective. Could you share about that? And also, of course, don't share what you don't want to share inside.
No, I have to relate. I also like this moment where you were saying, yeah, how do we, like in the questions that you brought up in the intro, like how do we resist gentrification? And I have to relate to something that Melis was saying about like when you started like this queer brand merchandise, that you were like, yeah, but I'm anti-capitalist, and so what is that? And I was resistant. So for me personally in my journey, there has also been a re-signification of what resistance means in me working. I've learned so much about like working with the people that I'm working with and having different positionalities, let's say. So to circle back, I will go back to your question, but for example, to stress a bit about this thing of resistance, for me, a practice of resistance was like boycott Pride. Like Pride is something that is for profit within the homo-nationalism atmosphere of the Netherlands. I boycott it because I don't ascribe to it and all what it entails, right? But for a trans undocumented refugee person who comes from a place where they have never been able to be proud and have the space, they love to be in a boat. So I'm gonna raise money so that they can be on the boat and be on the kind of having a good time, you know. So that for me has been like, whoa, like really, and so for each of us there is a different sense of what it means to resist, and through that same of lenses, that's like same, like for me it was like, I would never like receive money from like or NGOs or like for doing activism or coming more from this previous anarchist, leftist, grassroots organizing, and then understanding that actually that was perhaps at the moment the most radical move that we could do, and is to like take that money and reshuffle it to people that actually don't have resources because of the intersectionalities that I explained. They don't have access to money, and also for the community itself that doesn't have, such as I was explaining, like that to create its own ground and create its own ground to share narratives, to create to start articulating what our narratives are, because our narratives are, again, like here within the Dutch, like the narratives of a migrant are different than the narratives of a second migrant generation, for example. It's not about what is, but it's a different texture. There are different complexities about border control, about passport privilege, about living in war, about being displaced in your lifetime. You know, it's so having those spaces to actually start articulating what, the complexities of our positionalities.
Could you say something about how that works within the collective? Again, I'm sort of wary because I also feel that there should be illegibility wherever that feels best, right? But like, I'm just thinking about, as you were saying, these different positionalities and somebody wanting to be on a boat, like how as a collective do you work through these differentiations? Be a collective, but completely take in account differentiation. So not going towards equality, but really thinking from an equity point of view. Could you say more about that?
Actually, this has been like personally a really healing journey for me, because the codes of I was writing here also, like, and when I was preparing, and like, something that we share, for example, is politically incorrectness, which is something that in the North Globe, like US, is like, we are all politically correct. If you go and see what like Colombians are writing, it's like politicamente incorrecto. All the time we're saying enough just to say like, we can, like, it's we're not trying to be goody good. So it's operating through different, we have different trigger warnings, we have different codes, we have different ways of relating. For example, we started doing a practice of somatic, which is basically awakening the sensation in the body, because I'm a dancer, so it was like bringing some of these practices for people that are not dancers, and just really also to heal and reconnect and like awaken numbness in the body and traumatic. And so in the like the codes of the Dutch and European and US culture is like, I would have to ask you and all these things about, can I be touched, like really verbal consent. For us, it was not a thing, like none of them, all the trans, you know, so it's different ways of how we explore these things. And in that sense, that has been a very liberating journey for me, because the other day we were thinking like what unites us, but we are, you know, like we also are not like all trans, all non-binary, all lesbians, or we're not. For example, in our collective, I can also not even say we're all left-wing, because there is a person from Cuba. She hates communism, you know, it's like, great, I also hate it from the Cuban perspective, you know, fuck that, what they're doing. So it's how to maybe, what unites us is how to stay in solidarity with the different positionalities that we have. And I have to say, there is really something about sweetness. So like, nobody trying to also own what is the most the truth or like the most radical thing to do, or like compete in these like Olympics of like oppression, and like we are not operating under these codes. But there is a lot of, we just had a retreat, and I feel a lot of sweetness. Like I don't know what, sweetness. People like also, you know, like also seeing like, and that I would say like maybe there is something about the Latin American identity coming from the indigenous cosmovision, that is the sweet word. So the indigenous talk about the sweet, like, the sweet word, and how you connect to people as being, the sweetness of the word. And that's also that I see also in the movements back from like comrades in Colombia, for example, a trans boy singing a song for trans women of that they are made of stardust and how amazing they are, while I see in the Dutch and US context a lot of like trans men and trans women fighting for who is more oppressed. And then again in the context of Papaya Kuir, like they're the besties, you know, like trans boys and trans women, like they're both like, but you have to empower yourself. No, but so it has a different orientation in that sense. So
I want to relate it maybe to also your personal practice, which is already not personal in the sense that as a choreographer and performer, from what I have seen, at least in terms of your performances, you're always collaborating. And I'm wondering, for example, your performance Omnitoxica was also very much about the questions around violence. And when you were speaking about this sort of veneer of being a good queer or being a political correct kind of a consent practicing queer. I think with Omnitoxica, the performance you made some time ago, so I hope it doesn't feel like going back in time for you too much, but like the question of like how to narrate through violence instead of condemning violence also came up very much. And I wonder if you wanted to say a little bit about your own practice in relationship to these questions that you are undelving through collective organizing with Papaya Kuir, if that's a...
Can you make a bit more clear this link, Simone? Like I understand like the thing is my practice, but how does that connect with Papaya? I don't fully...
I think, I mean, I want you to basically, I just want you to share a little bit about your practice, because I think it's wonderful. But also I'm thinking about, and you said this, right? You introduced some body exercises, some body work. And I'm thinking about your body knowledge being a form of organizing in relationship to space creating. And I'm sorry if this is way too abstract, will blame me being sick, but I think there's something about, I don't want to say the body is a space, because that makes me feel, coming from the colonial lineage that I come from, just like saying like colonize the body or something. But I was hearing something about how you were thinking about consent in relationship to like doing that collectively, doing body work collectively. I'm sensing that there is a kind of bodily knowledge around what it means to create spaces. And again, I'm sorry if this doesn't resonate, just, you know, we'll drop it here. But maybe it does, right?
Yeah.
I'm seeing you not.
No, I get, you know, definitely, for example, one of the things that also in terms of like consent, we do consent a lot through, I've learned a lot also about verbal consent. It's not about like good or bad. Like at this moment also, I embrace that as being like in a migrant identity, you know, in a migrant experience. But we also communicate a lot through nonverbal communication. And that's also something that I feel that sometimes folks that have like been educated through verbal communication have little sensitivity of what is to be, to communicate through the body. And to connect it maybe to the word, like to what you were saying about Simone, indeed, like it's about also in my own personal journey, like how do I keep on, not because I also work with this in my own personal work with these victims, like censor things that are being censored. The last work that I just did is about stories of people that have disappeared in Colombia through a structural genocide of the paramilitary government. That is like what we see, no, the legacy of narcotraffic that we still see in Netflix of Paula Chaves, but the actual real story that we still live in, the horror, the narco gore that we still live in there. It's really about how do we also, in my experience, so from that in the macro sense, but also in the micro, how do I keep on censoring things like filling myself up to stop self-negating myself, you know, what Audre Lorde also said, like stop I always feel very silly. I think I'm not academic. I never, like, you know, but I throw this thought, but yeah, like to accept ourselves as we are, and like and as a tool to resist what we constantly need to portray that we are, and that also in regards to like queerness and how we are told that we need to be, and like these are the codes that are set for us. So we do verbal consent, we do touch, we do pronouns, which again is not about saying it's good or bad, but there is also other things that like what happens when these things become so static and so square that it's almost like it makes us rigid. So also how can the body like yeah, give us also space to make mistakes, to be silly, to there is something that now when you were talking about this is like, yeah, like for example, we bully each other. I'm not a lot, but yeah, we bully each other in our collective, and then we also talk like, hey, what is the line of when you go too much? I'm yeah, maybe Dee or like Melis can relate to their context, but where is the border when you're actually, oh, you have passed, you went too far, and it's like, shit, sorry, you know. But so kind of going rather than staying contained in these confines of what the rules are, because we are afraid to make mistakes, like trying to reach out and break, and then maybe saying we went too far, and then that was actually indeed violent in a bad way, or it didn't feel yeah, you crossed something that didn't feel good for me, and then how can from that space it kind of start the conversations. And for me, I can also say I have again like relearned a lot about the way in which the Latino identity is built up by being again with these Latinas, Latinos. And is that, for example, sometimes like I would feel uncomfortable about certain things with some member of my collective. I would say something, they would reply in a joke, we don't talk back, but then you see there is behavior change. But then we don't have this like 3-hour conversation, you know. So there is. So I'm being reminded of also the how things can have different dramaturgies. Yeah. I hope I haven't been so abstract, but yeah.
No, that's perfect. And it's also, Paul, the most wonderful bridge from almost 2 hours of talking to dancing, because we're going to dance soon. Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you, Melis. Thank you, Dee. Thank you so much. I think we should continue this conversation as always. We always end feeling with too little time. Don't know if the audience feels like that, but you know, we breathe with you. So hopefully you feel similar. I feel sweetness, as you were saying, Paul. I also want to thank the sign language interpretation, Turkish sign language interpretation, ML, and also Turkish interpretation by Oner. And do we want to say anything else? I really want to thank you all. I really want to thank everybody who is listening in. Kubra, Omer, I love you. And shall we dance? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
Or is there any last shout? Oh, I see Dee having a finger up.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I just put a finger up because I didn't know what to do. I just wanted to say, like, you know, to kind of like emphasize the need to have these conversations, and also to also emphasize the need for safe spaces, because, you know, as Paula was saying, it's just like there's a lot of countries as well and spaces that have centered themselves, like as accepting and, as welcoming of LGBTQ people, like as refugees and stuff. But at the same time, for example, like South Africa, it's like the queer haven of Africa. But when in reality, when you come here, you start realizing and seeing all the cracks, that are happening. And so like, it's really important to know that even in the countries that where homosexuality is legal, the need for us to keep having these conversations and creating safe spaces is really, really, really important, because you never know exactly what the other person is going through, or the what they have to deal with to actually feel the safety, or to just be feeling like they are safe in that particular context. So yeah, that's all I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, dear Dee. Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Melis. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. It feels really empowerment. Yeah. When we talk about the spaces that we need, or how we create those spaces, how we sustain those spaces, and really thank you, and proud of each of us, I want to say.